Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our February 2025 ecologiQ Innovation Showcase. Actually, our first one for the year. I'll give it a couple of minutes while you bumble through the virtual front door. So I think we've got over 160 registered attendees for today's event. So there's quite a few of you. So again, thank you for making your way to our innovation showcase. So let's have a quick look at the numbers here. Okay, I think the rooms are filling up pretty quickly, so we might make a start. For those that are coming in, my name's Doi Lee. I'm the industry manager of ecologiQ, and I'll be your host for today's showcase. And my co-pilot here today is Lily Rose. Lily Rose, do you want to say hello to everyone on the showcase?
Morning, everyone. I'm Lily Rose, Senior Industry Advisor. Thanks, Doi, for hosting the session today. Really excited to get started.
Fantastic. And in the unlikely event that I'm struck by media and my internet goes down, Lily Rose can take over and we'll host the session. But we're hoping that it should be a pretty smooth ride for today's webinar. So. Just before we get started, although we're meeting virtually, I do want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all meet. So for me, I'm dialing to you from the lands of the Bunurong people of the Eastern Kulin Nations here in Victoria. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their elders past and present, and really acknowledge the elders and First Nations people of the lands from where you're dialing from today as well. I think it's important that we do this because I mean, we're all here today because we're all have an interest in sustainability. Some of you might be familiar with the circular economy and about really ensuring that our resources are, maintained for as long as possible, because as the planet's been doing for millions of years. And I think, our first owners here called that caring for country. So we might call it sustainability and all that, but really, I think if we can share in that sentiment and take some, learnings from that wisdom, then I think it's a great place to start in terms of acknowledging and treasuring our resources. So. For those who haven't heard of ecologiQ before, ecologiQ is a Victorian Government initiative, and we've been around for the last 4 years, really supporting and putting in place, to our knowledge, what was Australia's first recycle first policy, which meant that for the Victorian road and rail projects, they've had make some real key steps to using recycled materials in their construction. And so we know that from a circular economy perspective, landfill is probably the last option, but we can find ways to divert from landfill, recycle and repurpose materials, and use our waste products as a resource. That's going to help us transition towards that circular economy. So. And how the recycle first policy works behind the scenes is that it is about optimizing the use of recycled materials. So we chose that word carefully. So it's not just about using it all the time. It has to make sense in terms of the economics, the carbon footprint of that material as well, and what makes sense for projects that are in play. And secondly, I think what gets reported gets done. So all our projects that have a recycle first requirement actually report on the materials and volumes of recycled materials used to date. And we're happy to report that to date, we've had over 2.5 million tons of material used on our projects, another 3.5 million tons committed, and twice the number of projects that have adopted the recycle first project policy before it came into place. And in terms of how many MCGs is that worth? If you're a Victorian, it's worth we're approaching 2 MCGs worth of recycled materials. So it's a lot of recycled materials that are being used on Victorian road and rail and tunnelling projects. But here for today's showcase, we've enlisted a couple of experts to help us guide and steer some of our presenters to get their products to hopefully adoption on our projects. In no particular order, I might start with Andrew Pepakostas from Department of Transport, who's been with the showcase since the very start. Andrew, did you want to say hello to the audience and introduce yourself?
G'day, Doi, and hi, everyone. So my role, Principal Engineer, Papers and Materials for the Department of Transport Planning, and one of those areas I deal with is in the technical standards and specifications, both standard and national level, and that also entails the consideration of new products, and those products that consist of recycled materials have been in our space for some time, and generally we're the starting point for industry with respect to particularly pavements when recycled materials are being utilised. Back to you, Doi. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, Scott Watson from Northeast Link. Now, Scott, just to let you know, I'll update your name because I know appreciate you standing in for Anne Morgan-Paler at the last moment. So, but yeah, if you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Doy. Yeah, look, my name's Scott Watson. I've been with what was Vic Roads and the transport sector since about 2000, working across urban design, but also sustainability and environment over that time frame. Currently, I'm on the North East Link project, working on the Eastern Freeway, but have had a real interest in use of recycled content throughout road construction over several years, and was for a while responsible for the recycled first policy when I was back at Vic Roads.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for being an advocate for the space as well. And Yuchin Kwai, Yuchin from Major Roads, you want to say hello to the audience and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Lloyd. Morning, everyone. My name is Eugene Kui. Was before. My current role is a structural engineering advisor, provide a technical advice and support to the MRPV project. And good to be here, and would like to see more recycled material used in our road infrastructure project.
Wonderful. Thanks, Yuchin. Again, thank you for lending us your expertise for this today's showcase. Just a little bit about today's format and housekeeping. If you haven't been to one of these before, we'll hear from three suppliers today, industry partners. So Rowan Sanderson from Flagworld, who will be delivering the key presentation, but he'll also be supported by his partners at BlockTexx and OC Connections, which you'll just have to find out how all that works. We have Ashley Davidson from Woodshield to talk about their Woodshield product, and Andrew Ritchie from Ecosphere to talk about the services they provide. And also one of my favorite segments, Lily Rose will be running our Where Are They Now session, and we'll have Brendan Lee from Closed Loop, who actually presented, if I remember correctly, at our very first innovation showcase way back probably almost 4 years ago, at the very first showcase session on their product, PackPave, which is an additive in asphalt that's actually made from simply cups, coffee cups, amongst other things. So for you in the audience, if you want to interact with any of our panelists, you can ask them questions in the chat function on Zoom. So you should be able to hop in there and type in your Q&A. So again, for all our presenters, you can hop into there after your presentation and have a chat to the audience and answer any questions there. I'll remind the audience that if you do have a question for a particular presenter, please name them or name their organization so they can follow and know who you're directing that question to. So without further delay, I now hand the stage over to Rowan Sanderson from Flagworld to take it away. Tell us about their Sustaina Wrap.
Thank you so much, Doy. Appreciate your time. And my name's Rowan Sanderson. I'm the CEO of Flagworld. I want to start by sharing a story with you. So next slide, thanks, Doy. The Paris Olympics 2024, the best ever Olympics, the largest sporting event Paris has ever had, or France has ever had in their history, the most gold medal wins for Australia, and the most sustainable Olympic Games ever, with a 54.6% reduction in carbon emissions on Rio and also London Olympic Games. Next slide, thanks. But according to Rob McCreevy, the Director of Procurement for Brisbane 2032, their biggest issue in sustainability with the Games was their gawk mesh. Next slide, thanks, Dewey. So, as you can see on the top left-hand corner, there was 800 square kilometres of gawk mesh produced for the events, for the pop-up stadiums, which is about 250,000 kilograms that went to landfill. Currently, there is no product-to-product recycling capability globally for this material. And as according to a circular economy market report from Recycle Victoria in 2024, the Victorian construction is currently doing zero recycling of textiles. Next slide, thanks, Di. And Victoria has miles and miles of gawk mesh, which is PVC coated. Thanks, Di. And miles. And sometimes this will be replaced up to 5 times in the life of the project. Thanks, Joy. And what's the challenge? What's the problem here? This material is covered with PVC or polyvinyl chloride, which is highly toxic and very difficult to recycle. And if you are recycling it, you are going to lose the PET fabric. So currently there is no recycling capability here in Australia for this material. Next slide. So Flagworld, OC Connections and BlockTexx have partnered together to provide a solution, a turnkey solution for you. So who is Flagworld? So we are the Australian leading flag and banner producer with operations here in Victoria since 1963. We produce hundreds of thousands of Australian, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islanders flags and international flags, but also street banners and promotional banners. So we have long-standing partnerships with the Australian Government, both state and federal, and over 700 local councils across Australia. Thanks, Doy. And we have a solution, and we've called it Sustaina Wrap. This is using our current printing technology and machinery that we make all our flags on, but we're using a polyester material that can be 100% recycled here with our partner BlockTexx. And critically, 1 kilogram of this material recycled will unlock the equivalent of 30 kilograms of CO2 offset emissions. We can print high resolution images. It's UV stabilized inks as per our flag, so lasts well in the environment and meets all construction industry standards. It's versatile enough to be for government projects, events and public spaces. Thanks, Doy. And Sustaina Wrap can replace and fully replace all these PVC coated gawk mesh across Australia. We have the capability and capacity to print and produce this material now and currently are. Thanks, Doy. So it is 100% recyclable, and we are printing it here in our Mulgrave plant. So it's Australian made, and we are using 80% solar energy in all our productions. Thanks, Joy. So I'll hand across now to Richard from OC Connections to provide an overview of the partnership he has formed with our business, Flagworld. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Doy. My name's Richard Rolfe. I'm the Eco Products Manager at OC Connections. OC Connections is a disability services provider. Just to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Doy. We provide supported employment, residential, social enterprise and recreational services to more than 400 people living with a disability. And our vision is to make a major positive difference to the lives of those people. Our core values of choice, opportunity, respect and equality guide everything we do. We're committed to upholding the dignity and rights of every individual we support and foster a culture of inclusivity and understanding. Doy, next slide, please. OC Connections Enterprises is the enterprise arm of OC Connections. We're an Australian disability enterprise. We're certified by social traders and we provide employment for over 100 people with disability. We provide general packing services, car washing and detailing, document scanning and administration, and eco products. Next slide, thanks, Doy. Our premier product, eco product, is the Eco T-top traffic bollard. We manufacture Australia's only 100% recycled plastic traffic bollard. Since our launch in November 2022, we've sold over 60,000 bollards. That has provided 6,000 hours of employment for our supported staff and stimulated the local economy and has delivered positive environmental outcomes. We've achieved a reduction in fossil fuel emissions and we've delivered over 100 tonnes of plastic waste being diverted from landfill. Next slide, if you wouldn't mind. Oops, sorry, that's me. We're delighted to be part of the Sustaina Wrap project. It's consistent with our core values and our focus on developing products with sustainability at their core. It will provide further employment opportunities for our supported staff, helping them develop new skills in the product finishing of the Sustaina wrap and order fulfillment. And that's about me. So there's plenty of time for Adrian to do what he needs to do now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Rohan. Pleasure to be here. My name is Adrian James. I'm one of the co-founders of BlockTexx, which is Australia's and the world's leading chemical textile recycler. Next slide, please. We are based in Queensland. We have a plant, which you can partly see behind me, of around 10,000 tonnes of capacity. We've been operating for 6 years, and we pride ourselves on ensuring that textiles, what the market calls a waste, we call a resource, is all recycled here onshore in Australia. Next slide, please. It's a combination of science and engineering. We have our own patents. We invented a process 5.5, 6 years ago to separate polyester from cotton, and we actually use those processes within a plant. We process about up to around 2,000 kilos per hour in the plant, and all this machinery has been designed here. Our sweet spots are polyester cotton blends of any mix. So yes, Sustaina Wrap is a Flagworld, already an existing customer of ours, because we also work with pure polyesters, man-made cellulosics, and pure cottons, and we combine those in various mixes for our chemical reaction to occur. Next slide, please. We've built a full end-to-end ecosystem, so we ensure that we can guarantee security and safety for the product all the way through collection. We have a range of clients, from commercial clients, post-consumer clients, post-industrial clients. We collect literally hundreds of tons of products every month, including flags from Rohan, and we process those, we sort them, we decommission them, and wish to build a further relation with Richard and OC to actually use services such as his own to actually engage people with disabilities and give them meaningful employment. The product is then shredded and it arrives at our facility. It then goes through our patented soft process, which is the separation of fibre technology, and from that we produce two raw materials, essentially Polytex, which is the polyester, the recycled rPET, and we produce Celtex, which is the recycled cotton, which is being formed into cellulose, its next building blocks. And those have a variety of uses, both in industries across both onshore and offshore. Next slide, please. Polytex is a polyester. We reform that into textiles. So we're doing work in the geofabric space, we do work in the injection molding space, and we have a variety of clients across the building and construction industry. Next slide, please. And the Celtex is the cellulose-based product. We see this as being, particularly in an industrial setting, being used as both a barrier and a binder. We've done some significant work in the dust suppression area. We've done work in the as an ingredient into soil additives to improve soils. That's my picture of my business partner with the Mayor of Loganholme in a park that we regenerated using recycled cellulose. Next slide, please. Thank you.
That's you, Adrian. Thank you very much. But with that cellulose product, it's putting carbon straight back into the soil, which is incredible. Next slide, Doi. Just industry standards, just to provide you an overview. We have proven multiple construction sites for over 12 months wear with the fence wrap. It's equivalent to non-recyclable gawk mesh. Flagworld is an ISO 9001 quality assured business. OC Connections and Flagworld were both recognised recently in the Monash Business Awards for business excellence. And as you can see here, OC Connections, social trader certified, registered NDIS provider, and BlockTexx had won multiple innovations awards, culminating last year with the Innovation Australian Hero Award for their innovation in this space, and leading the world in recycling textiles. We had multiple conversations with flag companies over in Europe, the biggest companies in the world. No one over there can do what Adrian and BlockTexx are doing. Next slide, thanks, Doi. Next steps, these are questions for you, the audience. Is this a key issue for the construction industry? Where else in government is textiles an issue? And what we are asking for is pilot opportunities. We're looking for government infrastructure projects to pilot Sustaina Fence Wrap as a circular alternative to traditional non-recyclable wraps. Policy support. We seek to share our learnings with the Department of Transport within the Recycle First framework. And then finally, industry connections. We want to connect with contractors and construction companies to develop concepts and use this material for their construction textiles at scale. And thank you, Doi.
Thank you, Rowan, and thank you to all the partners from BlockTexx and OC Connections as well. I'll now open up to the panel. Have any takers first for Rowan or anyone else? Andrew, first cab of the rank. Over to you.
No worries. Thanks, Rowan and Richard, Adrian, for the presentation. Well done on the product and also the employment opportunities that comes with it. One area that always comes is the area of cost. So cost, your product versus the alternative, where's it aligned? And also you may want to make some observations about the life of your product compared to the current product. I know you spoke about 12 months, but if there's added life there, then it may indicate that the whole of life costs are quite attractive.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrew. There's two parts of that question there. Obviously, longevity. I suppose the experience we've had over 60 years producing flags for the Australian environment, a very hard environment, has given us the capability to do that on our fence wrap, a Sustaina wrap. So without understanding the full details of the current wraps, we are highly confident that would outperform that wrap in longevity. Pricing wise, there obviously we have the industry capability to produce as it is, so we're not trying to cover cost of machinery upgrades or anything like that. However, obviously you've got to take in the whole life costs associated with it. So I might just actually get Richard to just provide a bit of an overview of the whole life costs.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ron. I think it's important in any conversation about costs, when it comes to recycled products and sustainability, any conversation about costs has to consider the true costs of the current business as usual. So the typical approach is the procurement teams will focus on something like this. They'll be thinking about cost per linear metre only, but we should be probably considering what the cost of waste disposal currently is, and not just the cost in terms of dollars, but what's the cost to our environment to continue ploughing hundreds of kilometres of PVC material, which is known to leak toxins, ploughing that into holes in the ground. How sustainable and cost effective is that approach? So in any conversation about pricing, I think it's important to step back and consider the whole process. So that said, I think the Sustaina Wrap product is competitively priced against existing PVC products. And actually, Rowan, I think you've got some more information about recent experience.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So Andrew, we have been successful in winning a project up in Brisbane for major build there for the Olympics. It's 9,000 linear metres of fence wrap. With price that we obviously don't know the competitor pricing, but we were successful. So obviously it's commercially viable for a large construction company to proceed with it. But the other key thing I think we need to think about here is the circular economy, because recently I've done a bit of work with Circular Economy Australia, and their recent report that they itemised that every year Australian firms spend about $1.4 billion sending products to landfill that are worth over $26.5 billion. So we've got the capability here with Adrian and BlockTexx to recycle this material back into an rPET material that can be used for another flow-on effect product. We are also working with our fabric supplier to utilise 100% recycled fabrics before we even send them out. So that's work in play that we are very done trials, very excited about that opportunity there.
Yeah, look, and I agree with your comments about costs. It's not just about the bottom line. There's a lot more that goes into it, and I also believe that that regardless of cost, good products find a way through. So I suspect you've got a good product there that will find a way through. So no, well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Thanks. Andrew actually covered a bunch of my questions and they were great and fantastic presentation. It's great to see the integration between the three companies. It's always inspiring. Like I just wanted to go and grab my daughter and say, look at what these people are doing. It's fantastic. So thank you very much on behalf of kids around Australia for trying to make the world a better place. I've got a couple of practical questions. In terms of what we could do, I'm racking my brains about how we might help at our end. But one of the obvious opportunities is probably looking at an expectation through procurement from our end to perhaps have an expectation for recyclable products to be used for gawk screens. That might be something we could do. Is there something else that you've thought of that you think would be helpful, that would help support this industry become more sustainable from a procurement perspective?
I suppose that's why the asks are there. Ask government to, ask for potentially an equivalent to Sustaina Wrap, moving away from the PVC gawk mesh, and then introductions to the major construction companies that are procuring it. The one thing I've had multiple conversations with both government and with construction industry. The major thing that I've identified is they're not even aware that there's a recyclable alternative. They're not even aware that the current product that they're using cannot be recycled. So it's just maybe an awareness there as well, but also an opportunity to be involved in the tender process with this. I know with the work we've done, we've spent 5 years with Adrian and BlockTexx to develop the capability to recycle our materials, especially on our flags that we use. And last year we recycled over 16,000 tonnes of material, or 16,000 tonnes of flags. That is based on our printing capabilities, the inks that we use. Water-based inks rather than UV inks. So there's a whole range of work that we've done to be able to enable that Adrian, in his process, can seamlessly recover the PET in the fabrics.
Yep. I've got one last comment, if I may, a question/comment. What I'm finding, we're working with recycled plastics at the moment on the Eastern Freeway. We're going to have a series of panels going up, which is exciting. But what is particularly exciting is when you get designers working with the product suppliers to understand the nature of the materials. And I think that's a potentially really rich territory to explore next with designers, is to understand, are there even further ways with the use as water-based inks, but are there colours or characteristics that as designers they might want to take on board in the way they design it, so they're really coming up with a design that suits the material that you're developing. That would be a pretty exciting opportunity to explore further.
Definitely, Scott. And what I might ask is Adrian just to comment on the work that he's doing in his industry with the rPET, and engaging with designers and engaging with manufacturers that then can use the rPET. Not only in Australia, but across the world. So, Adrian, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I'll just jump in there for a few moments. I mean, I think I totally agree with you, Scott. I mean, I think you have to good design. You're starting with the end in mind, rather than saying what do I do when I find out that I've got a problem. And so we have a lot of great scientists, material scientists working in our business, and one of the areas we do is our rPET can easily go into fibre, and it does. There's just no fibre spinning directly on shore in Australia, so we produce fibre offshore. But we have a large injection molding plastics industry still available in Australia, which we're very pleased to support. But those very often beginning, we're doing a lot of work in a variety of industrial products, from coat hangers to meal trays to fence posts to flag posts. And it's also beginning as say, well, what do you want the final product to look like? Because you can affect the output or the quality of that product in the melt, in the mix, by adding additives to it, rather than saying, I've produced rPET, but that's not what you want. So I'm really enthralled and interested in your comment saying, how do you work with the industrial designers to say, we want to have a noise reduction barrier that has these qualities, these colors, etc. Because then you can start to think about that in the chemical engineering of the product while it's in melt. And those are things that we're good at, and those are things that we really enjoy doing.
That's very exciting. Dolly, can I make one last comment?
Yeah, fire away.
Sorry, there is an area that's a pet peeve of mine in Australia. We haven't really got absorptive noise walls happening yet, and an absorptive noise wall is more effective than one that's typically reflective. Where it still feels like we're a way off getting there, which is it's a common product in Europe. That product it's a porous outer casing with a rock wool interior, and the rock wool is just serving the function. It's an exploded basalt. That's what rock wool is. But I do often wonder whether we could just be using plastic fibers to achieve the same result as a rock wool. And I don't know if that's something you've been thinking about, but it's an area, if you can get in touch with a noise wool manufacturer.
It's not an area. I mean, look, the short answer is if you know what you want to achieve, you can do anything with plastic.
Yeah.
You can make it as fibrous or as solid as you like. It's just understanding what you want to achieve. What I do think is important, to a point that was raised earlier, is that one of the furphies we often hear in the recycling space is that it's always more expensive. Well, I would counter that. We've always marked to market with our end product. And so we've always ensured that our product can match virgin pricing. Because otherwise we're never going to, I mean, everyone says I want to save the planet, but only if it's 2 or 3% more expensive. And that's just a practical consideration in very large spends. So so we also pride ourselves on saying, give us a really interesting problem and we'll try and solve it. And we'll also try and make sure that we mark back to market in terms of pricing.
Yep. That's great.
Thank you. And given our time, Eugene.
Yeah.
Questions.
Thanks, Tui. Thanks, Rohan, Richard, and Adrian. Good presentation, and learned a lot about the recycle. And I'm one of the fans for the recycle and would like to see more material to use in the infrastructure. My question is like recycled polyester textile especially got a lot of like barrier, like how do you overcome like microplastic release, limited recyclability, and environment impact?
Oh, sure. That might be one for
Adrian,
perhaps.
I think perhaps, Adrian, in your recycling process, because I know you actually have done a lot of work in that space.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question. I'm always intrigued by this question because it's assuming that virgin materials do no harm. When they actually, if you look at rPET and you compare it to VPET, they're pretty much the same. They behave physically in the same way. So whatever was happening in the VPET world is probably happening in the rPET world. But rPET manufacturers tend to be, rightly so, judged to a higher standard. And so our OH&S processes within the factory around microplastics in water, microplastics in the air, filtration systems for air, are all well beyond Australian standards. But if you could go into a standard pipe manufacturer who's been around for 40 years, and they probably haven't got any ventilation at all over their extruders. So I just think that it's a good question. I don't worry about it. We've had all our little boxes properly ticked. But I also think we have to, if we're going to compare rPET, we have to have a baseline comparison to VPET. Otherwise, you end up in the same discussion around PFAS. You know, PFAS is bad. Well, PFAS is already out there. So you just have to work out what the baseline is.
Yep. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you, and thank you all. I think it's obviously been a very inspiring partnership. And for those on the line, I see there's 86 people in the audience here. So if you're coming from a construction project or a council or whichever part of Australia you're dialing in from, please, you've had Rowan looking for a pilot project. And I think just as a last tidbit, understand Flagworld, Rowan, you are a Finsbury Green listed supplier, so you can already supply to Victorian Government. You're an approved existing supplier.
Yes, we are. Yeah, and
Yep.
we've supplied them for probably the last 2.5 years.
Yep.
A
Yep.
whole range of different banners, flags, promotional
Yep.
requirements. None yet in the fence wrap, but hoping to start that.
Excellent. Well, maybe from today's event, yeah, someone out there could be the first. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Doy.
Now I'm moving on. I will now hand over to Ashley to talk to you about Woodshield. Ashley, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Davison from Woodshield. First up, I've got a small video to show, sort of give a brief introduction on the product. Do if you can push that forward.
Did you know that most of the crops we eat need irrigation? But what happens to the irrigation pipe when it is past its use-by date and it becomes agri-waste? It goes to landfill. At Woodshield, we say no to landfill and use the old irrigation pipe once it's been recycled. The old pipe is chopped up and melted through extrusion into recycled plastic pellets. To make the Woodshield posts, we take timber from the forest and do not treat it with chemicals. Then we coat the timber in the recycled plastic, making a post that will last and stopping the agri-waste going to landfill. Once the posts are made, we ship them across the country and all over the world. When you purchase a Woodshield product, you're supporting plastic recycling and a part of the solution. The Woodshield posts are used in many different ways. Crop fencing, fruit orchards, general farm fencing, home gardens, horse fencing yards and arenas, boardwalks, jetties and piers, oyster farming and general aquaculture, parking bollards, playgrounds, show jumping poles, barriers for sports ovals and parks, trellis posts for vineyards. When the posts are no longer needed, simply remove them from the ground. Strip the plastic off the post, just like peeling a banana. Then the plastic can be chopped up and recycled. As the timber is chemical-free, it can be mulched back to the earth or burnt as firewood. Then we take the recycled plastic, the original agri-waste, and reuse it again to make new product. It can then be sent back out for farmers, gardens, vineyards, orchards, animal fencing, playgrounds and more. And this is our circular economy.
Thanks, Doy. So hopefully you guys all have a bit of an idea about the product now. It's untreated timber and it's fully encased in recycled plastic. You can see there from the schematic on the screen there that it's basically capped at each end, so it's fully sealed, and then at the end of life, obviously the poly can be recycled around. Can I have the next slide, please, Doy? We are taking chemical-free timber, which is CCA and creosote-free, and we're fully encasing it in recycled plastic. The plastic is a single-stream polyethylene, sorry, and it's recycled from irrigation pipe, T-tape, and the like. So instead of ending up in landfill, it is given another life. And it's important to mention here that it is a single stream polyethylene. It's not mixed plastics, so there's no combination of soft plastics in there and what have you. It's just all single stream. Can I have the next slide, please, Doy? The product was invented in 2004 by a group of poly engineers who are fond of a glass of wine. And in holidays to the Barossa over in South Australia, they noticed the abundance of broken timber posts, and they asked, well, why did the industry not use plastic? Solid or hollow plastic has a limited rigidity. So by combining a timber post with an outer casing of poly, strength and rigidity were added. And this meant a longer lifespan and a greater breaking angle, which was perfect for machine harvesting in the vineyards. But at the end of the day, we were all looking at what was the end of life with the timber posts. Can I have the next slide, please, Doy? The concept was developed and a production line was actually set up in Melbourne. The key factors were developed, which was utilizing agri-waste. They wanted long life, strength and durability. And standard methods of installation and application had to be incorporated, so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel as such. And again, there had to be an end-of-life solution. The next slide, please, Doy. The first product was installed in the vineyard, and it's still there today. Then the posts were installed in a coastal protection development where the harsh winds of the ocean, saltwater, sand, high temperatures have tested the product's durability, and they are still installed on site today with no deterioration at all, exactly the same as the vineyard posts. Next slide, please, Doy. The locals along the Eyre Peninsula in South Australia who saw that coastal protection development and were some oyster farmers, and they used timber infrastructure for the oyster farms. They decided they're going to install them in the ocean because they were obviously built to last. They weren't being eaten out by the marine borer, and the original posts are still installed in the ocean. And that led to posts being used around the coastline of Australia right now, installed for the aquaculture infrastructure. We also have exported them to New Zealand, Japan, and the US for the aquaculture. Next slide, please, Doy. And now we jump ahead after years of supplying posts to viticulture, aquaculture, equine, and the general farming sectors. And we developed a bollard range with our large profile. The poly adds about 40% strength to the timber. So our large profile at about 120 mil in diameter provides a strong product. There's no maintenance, no rot, no splinters, no painting, no termite issues, and it's very cost effective in comparison with the treated timber that's already been in existence or other alternative bollards. We sort of start from around $25 and go up from there. The next slide, please, Doy. We've partnered with multiple organisations, including Peppertown Playgrounds, who have renowned for making the old school log playground. And they've used them in a range of playgrounds throughout parks, schools, and daycare facilities. The beautiful thing is with the children there, there's no issue with any of the handling. There's no contact with any, obviously, no treated timber, and they last. Next slide, please, Doy. And we've partnered with Replas. Most of you would probably be familiar with Replas, a great Victorian company doing really well with the recycled plastic products. And they've used our products for various installations and continue to do so. Next slide, please, Doy. There is no different types of installation with them. You can still use the normal methods, your knockers and rammers for post installs. You can still use screws and nails, bolts. The only thing is you cannot have any timber showing because then the nasties will get in and it will deteriorate. So we always put it out there as a set links and it goes from there. Next slide, please, Doy. We achieved organic certification for input across Australia and New Zealand. And we've been doing that for a number of years now, supporting the industry. Next slide, please, Doy. We've won multiple awards and we're most proud of last year's win at the Australian Organic Awards, where we won the 2024 Innovation Award. And you can imagine in the organic sector, innovation is very competitive. Next slide, please, Doy. And now we come to an important part of our Woodshield ethos, and that's the end of life of the product. This was a key factor with the initial development of the product, and we don't want any more agri-waste dumped into landfill. The product lifespan is about 50 to 100 plus years, and we don't know obviously what the planet's going to look like then, but they're built to last. Next slide, please, Doy. The poly can be stripped from the timber like peeling a banana. The timber can be mulched or used as firewood because it's chemical free. The poly can be added to the existing recycling scheme, where being a single stream polyethylene, not a mixed plastic, it can be recycled into other products. We purchase recycled resin ourselves and we use it in our product. Every day we do our tests, and every day that product is stripped off the posts, and then we recycle it around again and use it back on posts. The product that we use for it is used in eyewear companies, clothing companies, toy companies, and computer companies. We're a proud Victorian company making an Australian-made innovative product right here in Colac, and we supply nationally and also export internationally. To my knowledge, there is no other company making a product like ours out there in the world. Next slide, please, Dory. At the end of the day, we've all got to remember we need to reduce the landfill. We need to reuse, reduce, recycle. You've got to be part of the solution, and so we all need to use recycled plastic products. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I might open to the panel. Maybe I might kick off this time. Maybe in reverse. Eugene, did you have any questions?
Thanks, Louis. Thanks, Ashley. It's very interesting product. Actually, just would like to understand what testing has been done so far for this Woodshield.
Did you say testing?
Yeah.
We've had it tested with 3-point bend test to establish the extra strength factors, and then we've basically had it in, well, we do plastic tests, but we've had it in the environment for 20 plus years. We're running ESCR tests regularly, and yeah, it's stood up obviously in the environment.
So does this timber meet the requirement AS 1720, the timber design? And the other one is AS4063 testing method?
We have not done those.
Okay. So the other thing is like, can this timber be engineered to meet the load bearing requirement for the root application, like barrier, this type of thing?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Just like this post can be engineered to meet the load bearing requirement and used for the root application, like root barrier.
Yeah.
Have you looked into it?
No, we haven't. This is our first foray into working with this. We've sort of come from the agricultural sector, and this is obviously our first toe in the water as such with this industry.
Okay. Yeah, I suggest you look into it. I can see there is a lot of opportunity to use in the root application. And what do you what do you see like opportunity to use in the root application? Do you see that?
Depending on the roads, obviously, I mean, bollards would be the obvious one. I'm not sure about the barriers. What I'd like to do potentially is maybe catch up with you after this, and maybe you can give me some advice.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you. It sounds like we've identified a couple of specs for road barriers that we might look at for Woodshield there, Ashley. So, Scott.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good questions, Eugene. That's very interesting. Look, it's a really intriguing product. And it's great to see so much timber waste does go to landfill, and it's non-recyclable, particularly the CCA treated pine. This looks like a really good step in trying to find a different way of dealing with this. I love the way the timber at the end of life can be recycled. In terms of the plastic material, I do have some questions around removal. Is it sufficiently rigid that you would be able to pull it from if you had it in a concrete footing in the ground? I was just looking at your playgrounds, for example. They'll be set in a concrete footing. How hard will it be to extract the plastic out of that setting?
Or that would be just like taking concrete off anything, really. It's been done before where the posts have been pulled out and the concrete's been knocked off. It depends again on how deep the footings are and what have you. For a playground installation, actually that has happened where they've pulled out the posts, knocked the concrete off. It doesn't have any effect.
Great. And the related question just is, it's intriguing seeing, you run cables through it or put screws through. Do you have a sealer that you would put over that? Because obviously once moisture and fungal spores or bacteria get in, the process of decomposition will begin in any organic product. So do you
wires aren't run through the product. It's attached to the sides of the product. So you can screw any bracket to the side. Yeah, we don't suggest anyone puts anything through it because a sealant doesn't last as long. So you will reduce the lifespan of the product.
So you just, I guess, relying on the compressive force of the plastic pushing back against the thread of a screw as it goes in, provides its own seal.
And in the timber industry, normally, you've had fasteners attached to timber. And the common thing with fencing is like the timber splits because it dries out and it cracks and the fastening gets loose. Well, the timber doesn't obviously dry out at all, and the poly is pretty well rigid the whole time. So you're not getting that loose fastener.
Yeah, right. That's terrific. Really interesting. I'll throw to Andrew if you're there.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Ashley, for the presentation. Just a couple of observations. Eugene pointed to some Australian standard testing. I think it's always a good idea to do those tests. We all, I know where I sit. The first thing we ask is, show us your test results. Do they pass testing? And it gives us an idea of the structural capacity. Clearly, you've got good history of the product in terms of its life and durability in the agricultural space. And I'm sure there's applications in the road space. One question, is the profile of the post always circular?
Yes, we've stuck with the circular profile purely for production purposes. We've dabbled with rectangle and we actually produced one for the aquaculture industry. But with sawn timber, there's always complications with twisting and warping. So we sort of, again, we're all about long life. So the round profile lasts a lot longer, obviously, and with less issues.
Yep, no problems. Well, thank you. Back to you, Doy.
Actually, Doy, I've got one last very quick question I meant to ask. Was just obviously it's black and it's part of a feature of the product at the moment. Are there other options for other colours? I'm conscious that black in a children's playground could get pretty hot in the sun.
We can make any color. We do make other colors with virgin polymer, but again, we're all about the recycling. So we sort of put for that. It's like Henry Ford. It was black or black, and we try and stick to that.
Cool, excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
And probably just another fun fact, I'm not sure if it's listed anywhere that I learned about the product, Asher, is that now it's survived bushfires, hasn't it? I'm not sure if it's officially fire rated, but you've certainly had plenty of bushfires go through, and I think the Woodshield posted the only things that
we did actually,
standing.
And it was by default. We found out by people calling us and saying the only thing that survived were our posts, and these were the fires through Malakuta and Cobargo. There is no fire retardant in there, and it will burn. We've seen it burn completely in the Tasmanian fires a few years back, but otherwise the poly is obviously got a higher burn ratio than timber. There's no fuel for the fire, no cracks for the embers. So traditionally the fires will sweep through and follow the fuel source, and that's what seemed to have happened in both Malakuta and Cobargo. And our posts still stand there today in the vineyards where everything else was burnt out.
There we go. Essential. Thank you. Hopefully it's inspired someone in the audience to have a look at the Woodshield bollards.
Thanks, Dorian. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now invite Andrew Ritchie to the virtual stage. Andrew, can you please hop on and tell us about Ecosphere?
Thanks very much, Doy, and thank you for the invitation. So I'm the General Manager for Ecosphere. And Ecosphere specialises in optimising our natural resources for the purpose of providing construction materials to civil construction projects. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll flick through the agenda. So I guess I just provide a bit of background specifically around construction materials in Victoria, and these are relating to I guess heavy construction materials provided by the extractive industry. So in Victoria, the extractive industry, I guess, generates around $1 billion cash annually. And we look at resources like your sand, gravels, hard rock, clays for use in concrete, asphalt, crushed rock. And it supports a pretty large industry of about $21.6 billion. During, I guess, the last period of time, through COVID, through the building booms that you've seen in Victoria, there's been increased demands on those extractive resources, and also, I guess, the supply chain around those extractive resources in terms of logistics. Typically in Victoria, and especially in around Melbourne, there's been an abundant, I guess, of extractive of material, supplied by the extractive industry through hard rock quarries and sand, and I guess through urban growth, and those extractive industries not being replenished, that supply has depleted, and then the next outer ring of supply for those quarries is further out, which will increasing transport costs of that material into the markets where it's required. And I guess the continued supply of those materials, is unsustainable, and it really requires a balanced approach of alternate sources to meet the demand, the ongoing demand. So prior to starting Ecosphere 6 months ago, I did a look at, through my knowledge of Victoria's extractive industry and in particular hard rock reserves. And you can see there, if you look at the Vic West North, the Vic West in particular, there's about 19.3 years left of approved reserves. Vic North about 14.8 and 13.8 in the east. I guess that was based at the time on current depletion rates and what was actually approved and shovel ready in the ground. Sorry, mate, if you go back. And I guess that research I did then, that's been, supported by the extractive resources industry supply demand study that was produced last year, which says that the demand for extractive materials is expected to increase from 63.7 million tonnes to 79.5 million tonnes by 2030. So who is Ecosphere then? So if you just press, that should be a video come through, mate. If you go back one. Back, yep. So just a short video around Ecosphere. It comes through. Next slide. So who is Ecosphere? So for those who know the Melbourne or Victorian geology, so typically to the north of Melbourne and to the west of Melbourne is what you got the newer basalt and the Western Plains basalts. So just about every civil subdivision in the north and to the west, you come across this material. And I guess it's a resource that is available and can be used on those civil construction sites where it's actually won. So Ecosphere focuses on how to, beneficate that material and reuse it on that site. So we're specialists in material reuse on those civil sites, and we've mastered the use of that as a way of, working with what we've got in front of us. So that land's transformed, it's beneficated, and it actually remains on the site. So it's just in a different, in a different form to what it was initially. Through looking at those materials, what we're presented with, through applying different techniques, we're able to optimise that, and that provides multiple benefits from reducing reliance on virgin quarries, fewer truck movements on the road, and lowering CO2 emissions as a result. Other benefits from optimising that material that's available, you do have the reduced transport costs, less wear and tear on the council road networks in and around subdivisions. You've got energy efficiency, so we're reducing the associated energy around transport, loading and unloading of materials. There's waste minimisation. Most of what we win, and which is excess from our sites, we're able to be reused back on those sites, just in a different form, applying a different technique to reuse those materials. As I said, lowering transport costs and local economic benefits. Sorry about the size of the slide here, but I guess in summary, if you look at the left, when the civil contractors were, I guess, faced traditionally with excess paddock rock or excavation stone or material from the sites, that traditionally they would that material would be carted off site. So it'd be won through rock hammering and then loading onto a truck, carted, taken away off site to a recycling centre. So typically that could be anywhere from 10 to 20 kilometres worth of travel, reprocessed into a material that could be used back in a civil site, and then back onto another truck, and then back 10 to 20 kilometres to be reused or to be used in the construction of the roads or infrastructure there. The ecosphere process, using our on-site crushing or screening equipment, everything stays on site basically. So the materials won on site, excess material stockpiled, processed, put in the back of the truck, and then put back into, sometimes put in back into the spot where it came out of, but just in a different form. Through that process, there's the obvious CO2 emission reduction of that truck transport to and from the sites, or from and to the sites, and a reduction in the reuse of virgin material won from quarries. Just the next slide, please, mate. Just a, I guess, a case study in the CO2 benefit. So we've got a site at Olivine up on Donnybrook Road in Melbourne. It was just, again, we're winning material from the site, crushing it on site, and then reusing it back on the site. We just did a desktop comparison of versus the traditional method of carting it off site, then processing it and bringing it back. And there's a clear reduction in the CO2, and majority of that's from the reduced transport of that material from the site and then back to the site. And another case study. Now this is a really great case study. So in developed our client, working really closely with Development Victoria, but also the Ballarat Council in the BWES employment, or BWES, the Ballarat Employment Zone. Through that collaboration, we council supported and Development Victoria supported the use of the excess materials. There was about 20,000 tonnes of great, really good asphalt quality basalt from this project that was won from the cut. We then worked with Vic Roads to have that material registered as a raw feed, as well as have that material, the mixed design, registered as a class 3 for use in that site. So we were able to use about 20,000 tonnes of that material on that site. And if we go to the next slide, 20,000 tonnes reused on that site, won and used on that site, which saved about 12,000 tonnes, 1,200 truck movements were eliminated from the import and export from the traditional virgin quarry sites. And you can see a decrease in 39% CO2 emissions just from that process. Next slide. you might be thinking, okay, we're using diesel in our crushing plants. One initiative we have employed and have seen a 10% reduction in CO2 emissions is the hydrogen on demand system. It uses mineralized water or pure water in these systems to produce, I guess, to produce a hydrogen which is injected into the combustion chamber of the diesel engines, and that produces a much cleaner burn, which we've seen a reduction of around 10% in our diesel diesel burn for those machines that we've got it on. So I guess in summary, Ecosphere, we're mobile crushing and screening technologies to beneficate any excess materials that are won on site and used on site. We've had some great wins with the Ballarat employment zone, and it really demonstrates the success of reducing waste and transportation costs and ensuring compliance with state and local government regulations. And we're actively seeking, I guess, new opportunities to create that positive environmental, economic, and social outcomes through our systems and processes for our construction projects and our customers.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. I think that was perfect timing. I'll now open
John, try to bring it home.
Yes. Open it to the panel. Any takers?
I'll jump in quickly first, but I'll leave plenty of time for Andrew because he's absolutely his wheelhouse. I'm just fascinated with this in an urban setting. In effect, you're doing a bunch of quarry work if it was an urban setting. How do you manage dust and noise and some of those nuisances?
No, we very, very well, to be honest. When we set up, I mean, in terms of the planning, permitting processes, it's all in line with what we're doing is seen as an ancillary activity to the construction of that development or civil construction activity. We work to an improved environmental management plan. We set our crushers up in such a way that the stockpiling of the material on site is done in such a way that we can set our crushers in behind them, so that they're working sort of with I guess a sound barrier, so to speak, from the nearest receptors. And in terms of dust emissions, we haven't got the photos here to show you, but we put a lot of water through the material to ensure that the dust is kept to a minimum, but it also helps beneficate the material for compaction and those sorts of things when it's reused.
Yep. And the other quick question I've got, and by the way, it's great. It's just makes so much sense doing this on a site. It's brilliant. Testing of materials on site and do you have issues with heterogeneity or mixed materials? Can you make sure they're uniform and
absolutely consistent? So we've got our crushing plants that are closed. We've got a closed loop crushing in the tertiary. So we run a primary, secondary, and tertiary crushing operation. So we run a closed loop on the tertiary. So you get material going around until it reaches the desired particle size before it goes out into product. So that gives us, I guess, that closed circuit provides consistency of feed, which provides consistency of product.
Does that ensure a consistency of quality? Because often materials coming out of the ground, there's a bit of variability, and you might have a difference in, I don't know, compressive strength or something. Does that stuff get picked up with in situ testing?
Yes, all of it. We run through an ITP, and we get Sven from DOT comes out. He looks after us.
Yep.
He does our registrations of our raw feed. And then we test our ITP to ensure that we're compliant with that. So it's a pretty good process we've got there. I think we can expand on it a bit more, but it'll just take a bit of convincing, I guess.
Yep.
Demonstrating.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, this is certainly your wheelhouse. Did you want to?
Yeah, look, I haven't, Andrew, thanks for the presentation. I haven't got any questions to you, Andrew, but just some comments in support of what you just said for our audience. So some time ago, many years ago, DTP recognised that there was good rock to be had out there in the western suburbs, all those rock floaters, you see them sitting on the paddocks. And so it seemed to be a wasted resource not to utilise them. And those rocks have been sitting there for a long time and been found to be durable and sound, etc. So we recognised that there were sources of material that were non-quarry source, so call it non-quarry rock. And you know, Andrew, you spoke about the case study where you had a particular job where you exposed some rock there, you called for DTP to assess that rock, and we just treat it as another source of rock that's got to pass the same type of tests that we would expect from a quarry. So we assess the rock and say whether it's durable, assign the various values. Then, Andrew, it's up to you to produce that rock to the required grading and do all the required testing in accordance with the specifications. So I think the process is fairly well established. There's opportunities to use materials from site. It makes sense, Andrew. The process is good, and I think where there's opportunity to do so, we should continue to pursue it. So, but Andrew, is there any questions for me from your perspective?
Look, there probably is. Like I would like to see the ability to, I guess, discuss things around the process of mobile crushing with Vic Roads. I think there's a few myths there that we could potentially bust in the consistency. Like we make a very consistent product, and you know, as the geology allows, we could go higher than a Class 3 standard into Class 2 without an issue at all. Especially the BWES of that Ballarat zone, that the material out there that you can win from your sites if you have enough of it and reuse, lends itself to. I mean, it lends itself to asphalt quality aggregate. As you probably know, Andrew, it's pretty good material. It's an older basalt, and it's not as I guess vesicular as what you see closer to Melbourne. So that would be one area, and then just I guess how do you treat the excess material? Once it's transformed from I guess the raw material into Class 3, if there's excess, how can we then, instead of just taking that, dumping that, how can we take that to another construction site and reuse it there?
Yeah. So that's the dust that generated the finer particles that hasn't got a.
Oh no! Just say if you've got a few thousand tonne left of Class 3 after you've finished the project, how do we grab that and use that somewhere else?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
All right, one to discuss. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last but not least, with 2 minutes to go, Yu Chin.
Yeah, thanks, Tui. Thanks, Andrew, for your presentation. I got two questions. One is related to the cost. The other one is low carbon emission. For the cost, how much is saving compared to the traditional method?
If you just look at cartage alone and work on, so if you work on 25 cents per kilometre per tonne of material is what you'll save, because you're taking that component out of the supply chain. You're reducing that. It could be a 40-kilometre round trip, I guess. So you have to take the material off site, the excess paddock rock, call it, or excavation stone. It needs to find a home somewhere. So you might take it to a recycling centre. You might take it to the nearest quarry. You could dump it somewhere at a landfill or a designated fill site. So there's whatever that travel distance is. For rule of thumb, you might be 25 cents a kilometre one way, and then it's from wherever your source is for your material, you're 25 cents a kilometre. So in terms of tonnage, the cost of producing a tonne of rock through a mobile plant on site or through a traditional quarry, probably similar per tonne, but it's that cartage component which you're eliminating and through that cost, and also the CO2 emissions from the trucks.
So in terms of the reduce the carbon emission, what tool have you been developed or been used for measuring the low carbon emission?
Beg your pardon?
In terms of the low carbon emission, what tools has been developed to measure it? How you measure the low carbon emission?
How we measure the emissions? Just through for the crushing plants and that, we know our fuel burns per hour for the machines, and we know, I guess, through theoretical fuel burns of transport for trucks. So you just do your, I guess, base your calculations on those theoreticals, compare that to, I guess, the mobile crushing, on-site mobile crushing versus a traditional supply. And then you just, that's through the desk, that's how the, I guess, the numbers came about. But I can give you specifically the guys that did the numbers for me. I can give you specifically their the tools offline if you like.
Yeah, please. Thanks, Andrew.
No worries at all.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, panelists. So to close out today's session, I'm gonna hand over to Lily Rose now, and she's gonna catch up with Brendan from Closed Loop. So over to you. Let's see what Closed has been up to.
Thanks so much, Doi. Hey, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that session. Some great presentations from all of our suppliers. So I'm here today with Brendan Lee, who's the Circular Economy Manager at Closed Loop for our Where Are They Now showcase, which is basically just an opportunity for us to check back in with a supplier who's pitched previously at the showcase and see what they've been up to, what their key milestones are, their challenges have been, etc. So Closed Loop work with businesses to improve their environmental impact through circular economy initiatives. And they also developed PackPave, which is an asphalt made with minimum 50% recycled content, including coffee cups collected through the Simply Cups recycling program, which you may be familiar with. We actually have some collection points in our office kitchens. So it's something that, we're quite familiar with. So Brendan, since presenting at the Innovation Showcase, what have been the key milestones or projects for Closed Loop and PackPave?
Yeah, thanks, Lily Rose. Thanks for having us back on. It's great, and thanks to the three previous speakers. Very inspiring presentations. Loved them all. So thanks for your question, Lily. So in February 2023, we laid out first pilot. I should say that PackPave wasn't developed actually by Closed Loop ourselves in partnership with State Asphalts in New South Wales, one of the biggest asphalt firms in New South Wales. And so there was a pilot in Penrith City Council in February 2023. And that was laid as part of that pilot. There were 4 different kinds of asphalt mixes that were laid. And then their performance has been monitored over the last 2 years. So PackPave has outperformed the others in there. It's only been 2 years, but obviously we've aced all the monitoring tests. So that's been fantastic. And then soon after that, I guess, Sydney Water trialled a section of PackPave just on one of their road repairs. They liked how it performed, and they're now nominating PackPave as their preferred asphalt for future roadworks in their significant estate. And then more recently, Department of Transport in Victoria. It's interesting dealing with different states. Everyone does things differently. But one of the major asphalt producers in Victoria submitted a mix for assessment to Department of Transport Victoria. It went through all the NTRO testing regimes and has passed that. And now I understand that very keen, Department of Transport very keen to see a project in Victoria.
Yeah, awesome. Wow. So some really exciting things happening with the trials and hopefully some more projects on the horizon as well. So when pitching, was there a piece of advice or feedback that you received from the panelists that helped to shape your decision-making or even build awareness within industry?
Yeah, definitely. Look, a little bit like today, to some of the presentations today, sort of a bit of the panel stressed the importance of of meeting industry and regulatory standards, and it's been a really it was an interesting learning process for us, because pack pave is a stone mastic asphalt, and stone mastic asphalts have been around for for decades, maybe even hundreds of years. So we were sort of the impression, because all we're doing is varying the fibre additive, and the fibre additive is added at 0.3%. So pack pave substitutes the existing fibre additive, which is made in Germany from wood chips, and we're replacing it with a locally collected recycled fibre. And so I guess we assumed that it would be a fairly easy journey, but yeah, we've learned that that wasn't quite as simple, and so it's been a long process, but we're well progressed now.
Amazing. So you touched on there some of the challenges that you had. Have you experienced any other challenges within industry or with industry engagement along that vein as well?
Yeah, look, definitely. So, we appeal to sustainability types. I mean, Closed Loop's audience is really geared towards sustainability, and so what we found is a lot of our inquiries from construction infrastructure projects have come from the sustainability team. And they, when we engage with them, they're very excited. But they tend not to be they're not the decision makers in what kind of asphalt happens. So it is a challenge, really getting the attention of the engineers who rightfully make these decisions. And the engineers are rightfully cautious. We obviously want all of our constructions to be to perform to a very high standard. So we understand there's reservation among engineers to trial things that are perhaps slightly different. We get it, but we also think that, and hopefully this is going to happen really through this sort of encouragement from the Department of Transport in Victoria, we just would ask, I guess, engineers to maybe consider trialling it in areas that aren't so critical. So even just sort of diversion roads, site access roads, that sort of thing, just to trial it, just to sort of get used to it, and you can do your own in-house monitoring. So look, that's been the challenge, and still is the challenge. Yeah,
keep an ongoing journey.
That's right. But Lily, it's been really where ecologiQ have been fantastic. And so thanks so much to yourself, Doy, and the team. The kind of these kinds of showcases where we get to, we really do get to sit in front of engineers and get to put ourselves open to discussion and sort of sharing our journey. So thanks so much for the ecologiQ team for giving us these opportunities, and love that you're now really taking that journey to the construction site. The online sessions have been fantastic, but in person so much better.
Thanks, Brendan. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, it's one of the core things that we really try to do, and is help suppliers connect and get you in front of the right audience and get some good advice from industry, etc. So I'm glad to hear that. And so finally, to close up the segment, just a bit of a blue sky question for you. What would you like to see in industry within the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, particularly in terms of pack pave, yeah, obviously we'd like to see more adoption, and accept that would be sort of through sort of smaller scale to start with. But we know it's a great product, and we know that it performs just like other stone mastic asphalts. Really, I guess one thing we really like to see is more adoption of stone mastic asphalts. They're a really high performance asphalt, but one of the things is that it's more expensive than your standard grade asphalts. However, it can be laid at a much lower profile. So, I mean, just very generally speaking, asphalt's typically laid at a 50mm profile. Stone mastic asphalt can be laid at a 30mm profile and achieve the same or better wearing and durability. and it outperforms standard asphalts in many other ways as well. But really, this is, stone mastic asphalt is typically around about 40% more expensive per tonne. But because it can be laid thinner, at about 40% thinner, it can be at a price parity. But typically, jobs are priced per tonne. Tenders are done per tonne. So we would like to sort of see a bit more sort of, I don't know, I guess, don't mean to be judgy, but it's more of an open mind about the way that this can be done, because, as Andrew was saying, the extractive resources they're a finite resource. So if you can lay it much thinner, not only does it use less fibre, but all those products, you save on 40% of all those materials, and that has a massive impact on your carbon saving as well.
No, yeah, no, 100%. Definitely some very interesting food for thought there. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brendan. It's been so wonderful to have you and to hear about how PackPave has been going. Hopefully we'll hear about some amazing trials happening in Victoria soon. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lily.
Thanks, Lily, and thanks, Brendan. I suppose, in like closing minutes, I want to open to does the panel have any questions for Brendan while he's here, or thoughts or comments? If not,
Nah, it's all
Scott.
good.
All good?
Work. Good work, Brendan.
Perfect. So
I'll make one comment since it's in my space. Yeah, just in terms of the PackPave product. So from a DTP perspective, it's got conditional registration for use in stone mastic asphalt. The conditional registration is based on seeing it applied in the field and make sure that the production process produces the mix as we expect. And once we tick that box off, we'll move to what we call general registration, which is business as usual. So, and the tick of approval in terms of field performance often goes back to the asphalt manufacturer, because they take responsibility for the mix. So if the fibre doesn't do its job, we'll see it on the ground. I suspect it will do its job, but we've got to go through that process. So, and Brendan, look, it was a good process to go through in terms of its evaluation and getting to where it is now. So well done.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And I think that's probably a good point too. So we developed this with state asphalts in New South Wales. Typically, SMA projects involving PackPave in New South Wales will be delivered by state asphalts, but in all other states, but most relevant in Victoria, we work with the major stone mastic asphalt providers. So they're in this situation, we just supply the fibre pellets to those. So thanks, Andrew. That was it. I appreciate you. I don't always get the language right for you from the regulator, but thanks for clarifying that. That's excellent.
No, all good. Thank you.
Just a last question. Would like to ask Brendan. Have you considered the biodegradation for the pepper?
So it's this is I really enjoyed Adrian's response to the microplastics question, because often we get, because there's a little bit of a plastic component, there's polyethylene at around about 5% in the mix, but we often get the microplastics question as well. But the polyethylene is very similar polymer to bitumen, so that blends almost pretty much seamlessly, and bitumen's a hydrocarbon anyway, so that's very similar. But in terms of the degradation, the pilot is fairly young, I suppose, but it's so far so good. It performs equally as well as the existing product on the market. But SMA, just like most asphalts, can be fully recycled. So we intend, the intention at the end of life is that product does get reincorporated into new roads.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, you.
Thank you. And just for those still on the call, if you enjoyed today's showcase, you want to find out about similar products, we actually have a catalog on our called an innovation reach on our knowledge hub, which if you don't have access to, please request access. Anyone can have access to our knowledge hub. From there, you can actually find, I think, over 60 different products have been pitched on the innovation showcase. Those that are still sort of in looking for trials, those that are in testing, and those that are also fully approved. So certainly worth having a browse on that there. So thank you for coming to today's showcase. Please join me again in thanking our presenters and our panelists for today's event. We will be back in May for our next showcase. In between now and then, we will be hoping to organize a few more in-person events. So if you're a supplier or you're a contractor looking to make connections and meet similar businesses to meet your recycle first or other requirements, please get in contact with us and keep in touch. We'll provide updates through our LinkedIn and the usual channels. And again, reach out to us on ecologiq@roadprojects.vic.gov.au for access to our knowledge hub. So without further ado, I will bring this webinar to an end. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much, Doi.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doi.
Thanks very much, Doi.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Thanks all. We'll be sending out the copy of the presentation and contact details after the event as well. So I should have added. Thanks all.